Welcome back to Management Made Easy. This is our third lesson. Recently, many people have started their own businesses and are facing challenges in managing their companies. But things are much better than they were 100 years ago. At least now we know that we need people to handle business management, human resources, finance, and so on. 100 years ago, businesses were mainly about running factories, buying equipment, hiring workers, with no clue how to manage them. They had no idea how much could be produced in a day or how much they should produce. There was no concept of this. This was the deadlock faced by every business owner at the time. In today's lesson, we're going to review how humanity broke through the deadlock through efficiency. We'll spend a lot of time on this topic. The deadlock we face today is actually a continuation of the previous one. Therefore, to solve today's problem, we must first understand the previous deadlock clearly. By the end of this lesson, you'll realize that although many managers today know they need to set up HR departments, they still carry the mindset of 100 years ago deep down. The ones who broke the deadlock 100 years ago were two people, Ford and Taylor. As mentioned in the first lesson, Ford was the founder of the Ford Motor Company, and the cover image of this lesson shows him. So, what did Ford and Taylor do? They introduced what we now call scientific management. Although the term sounds complicated, it boils down to two core principles. 1. Breaking down what needs to be managed into detailed tasks along the work process. 2. Maximizing the efficiency of each task. Let's use a small restaurant kitchen as an example. Without scientific management, one person might be doing everything, cutting vegetables, stir-frying, and sometimes taking a break to smoke a cigarette. With scientific management, the tasks are first divided into washing vegetables, chopping, prepping, stir-frying, and so on. Each person is responsible for one task. The boss then supervises to ensure that each person works according to standards, thus maximizing efficiency. A restaurant that does this is practicing scientific management. You can observe that most management activities today are based on these two principles essentially, breaking down the work process and improving the efficiency of each step. Now, let's go back to history. The first cars Ford produced had many different models. To increase production efficiency, he decided to produce just one model, the Model T. He then broke the production process of the Model T into 84 steps, which was an extraordinary task. Once this was done, a new concept emerged, parts or components, which led to specialized divisions of labor, and production could now be organized using an assembly line. The idea of breaking down manufacturing work didn't actually come from Ford. Napoleon once wanted to buy 1,000 muskets, which was a big project at the time. Someone suggested breaking down the production of muskets into components, but Napoleon rejected the idea, saying that the gunsmiths would lose their skills. So the idea wasn't approved. However, in 1798, when the U.S. Army wanted to buy 10,000 muskets, a businessman who had no experience in gun-making, no factory, and no machines, decided to break the production process into components. He handed over each part to specialists. Then, he assembled the parts into a complete musket in front of government officials, proving that the quality was assured. He told the officials, "You can fight on the battlefield without worry. No matter how large the task gets, I can provide enough muskets for you." Ford's greatest contribution was that he brought these ideas into car production. He introduced componentization, process standardization, and assembly lines to his factory. While Ford was doing this, Taylor wasn't idle either. Do you remember from the first lesson? Taylor was an athlete, and he was very familiar with the stopwatch. So, when he saw that business owners couldn't manage effectively, he grabbed his stopwatch. He realized that bosses didn't know how much output a worker could produce in a day, so many workers would slack off. He began calculating how many movements a worker needed to make to complete a task, how much time each movement took, and how long it should take to finish all the tasks. Then, He could estimate how much output a worker should achieve in one day. Thus, scientific management emerged on two parallel tracks. Ford focused on breaking down car production into steps, while Taylor studied how many standardized movements workers should make at each step to maximize efficiency. Ford and Taylor's combined efforts were evident on the assembly line in Ford's factories. The assembly line allowed workers to specialize in specific tasks, doing them in the most efficient way, without unnecessary movements, without bending over repeatedly, and without distractions. Workers didn't even have to think. They could just work instinctively. This work model greatly boosted efficiency. In just 19 years, Ford's Model T sold 15.5 million units in the U.S., and Ford's production accounted for half of the world's total automobile output. Later, scholars studied the impact of scientific management and found that the time it took to produce a car was reduced by 2/3, while the quality was still guaranteed. In 1934, a famous American bank robber named Barrow wrote a letter to Ford to express his gratitude. He said, "Although my work is illegal, I still want to write to you to express my admiration. Your cars are incredible. I can always escape from the robbery scene as quickly as possible because of the speed and reliability of your cars. No other car can keep up with me. I want to express my sincere respect to you." Thanks to Ford and Taylor, by the 20th century, the problem of managing manual labor had essentially been solved. Drucker estimated that, thanks to Ford and Taylor, the efficiency of manual labor increased by 50 times. But Drucker also pointed out that scientific management didn't solve the productivity problem for knowledge workers, and most of the work we do today involves mental labor. Drucker said that the productivity of knowledge workers in the 20th century not only didn't improve, but actually declined. This would become one of the most significant issues in 21st century management. This is why today's entrepreneurs face even more difficult management problems. The introduction of the assembly line turned people into a part of the machine. The speed and rhythm of the machine imposed a kind of forced efficiency, which helped manage people, control them, and improve efficiency. Humans broke the deadlock 100 years ago by focusing on efficiency. But in today's era, people's creativity makes up a larger proportion of a company's output, and managing creativity with a stopwatch just doesn't work. So if you lose the hearts of your employees, machines and assembly lines can improve efficiency, but efficiency may be lost in other ways. I once visited a factory in Singapore. It had an assembly line, but the owner decided to dismantle it. Instead, the required components were fixed in a spacious production area, and workers were free to choose when and where to assemble the parts. This gave each employee autonomy over their work. I asked the owner why he made this change, and his answer was simple. He wanted the employees to feel respected. Today, even manual labor involves mental effort, so we must respect people's autonomy and reduce the forced nature of assembly line work. This factory in Singapore teaches us that in the new era, managers need to find a balance between efficiency, driven by human creativity, and efficiency, driven by external constraints. This requires a higher level of management thinking, and it's something every manager should reflect on. That's why I'm spending so much time discussing the development of scientific management with you today. This is Management Made Easy. See you in the next class.